Poverty, Campaign 2000, Plan Institute, Plan, BC People First. Who else have we got here? We are having a great event here outside Jagmeet Singh's office, who has been, and this is Leo, my darling service dog in training, and we are here because we want the Canada Disability Benefit to achieve royal assent as soon as it possibly can, and so that we can all bring disability poverty to a crashing end in Canada, because there is no way in 2023 that anyone, particularly anybody who's disabled, should be living in poverty in Canada. Excuse me while I start to read some things. So it is my honour to do the land acknowledgement today. I recognise that we are on the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Hunky, Miam and Squamish speaking people, and I apologise for my pronunciation because I'm from Kelowna, where we live on the ancestral and unceded territory of the Okanagan Syilx, the First Peoples, and so I'm very used to being very grateful for that land, but today I'm very grateful that we can all be here on this land today. It looks like Leo, my darling, is feeling a little bit hot. He wants to invite people to join us to join in. So anyway, so I'm here today as the chair of Disability Without Poverty. We're a national grassroots organisation, and we've come together to eliminate disability without poverty. But right now we are single-mindedly focused on the Canada Disability Benefit. Once we get that in place, we'll just move on to everything else that we have to deal with for disability poverty, because that's not a big ask at all. But for now, in all seriousness, the promise of a disability benefit that could potentially lift people at least to the regular poverty line is so close and so important. It's been quite a journey to get here, and a year ago today, Bill C-22, which was the second bill that we'd had, because there was one a year before as well, Bill C-22 got first reading, and today we are hoping to achieve royal assent, which is the very end of the legislative process. We're hoping to achieve royal assent before the government all go on holiday for summer recess, and that could be anywhere from the 9th to the 23rd of June. If there's something that you'd like to do after this, obviously you're going to sign a postcard that I'm going to talk about. Contact your MP if it's not Jagmeet, if it's somebody else, and tell them that we need this to achieve royal assent right now. We cannot leave this to the fall. You know, as we know that Jagmeet Singh and the NDP are in a minority government situation with the Liberals, and we all know what happens with minority governments. We don't know what's coming next. We cannot wait another 6 months to find out if we're going to get royal assent. We cannot wait to start the process of working out all of those important details that we need to know, like how much and who's going to get it, and none of that can start until royal assent. So what we also need to have happen, come on sweetheart, back here, can you come sit? This is unusual. Hey, there we go. What we also need to have happen is for this benefit to be budgeted, and that's what this big yellow box and all of these postcards are about. Because for the benefit to actually benefit people, it has to be of an amount of money that will actually lift people out of poverty. Because if it doesn't, it's failed to achieve its purpose. So we today have a campaign that the Disability Without Poverty has been going on for quite some time, where we're reaching out to Minister Chrystia Freeland, and a group of our colleagues were at her office this morning asking, please, budget this benefit. Budget this benefit at an amount that will at least lift disabled people out of poverty to the poverty line, because we know the poverty line is no lollipops and rainbows. It's the poverty line, and $1 above the poverty line is still the poverty line. And we know that for disabled people, you know, looking at those of us sitting here in chairs and the other sorts of things we have to do, we know that being disabled costs us more than not being disabled. So the poverty line isn't even the poverty line for us. It's still below the poverty line. So the other thing that we're here to do today, And I'm not going to go into details and talk about it too long, because we are so lucky today that the Campaign 2000, who worked with us on the report card, Campaign 2000 happened to be in town for a meeting, and so they're able to come and talk about the report card today. So I'm going to hand over in a while to Leila, or I'm going to hand over to Joanne and then to Leila, whichever way it goes. But we put out a report card that tells the picture, gives a snapshot of poverty in Canada for disabled people today. And it's all based on income. We could have looked at healthcare, we could have looked at housing, but this is all based on income. And it tells us what we already know. It tells us that people who live alone, women, people with the most severe disabilities, they're the people that live in the deepest poverty. And so we don't need this benefit to just tickle around the edges of this issue. We need the benefit and then the ongoing work from the government to really get in there and make a difference. So I thank you. I thank you for coming out. I thank you for all of the work that people here from the organisations that I know and I see. I thank you for the work that you do every single day for disabled people, because we know the difference it makes for all of us and how important it is. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Sign a postcard, email your MP, and I have to get out of this sunlight before I melt. So I'm going to pass back to Amanda, who is our amazing BC organiser for DWP. Woo! Woo!
Amanda, thank you so much, Michelle, for your comments, and thank you to everyone for having me here today. I'm Leila Sarangi. I'm the National Director of Campaign 2000, which is a pan-Canadian coalition of community organizations, over 120 community organizations working to end child and family poverty, and we write annual report cards that monitor federal progress, provincial, territorial progress, or actually the lack of progress towards ending towards ending poverty for children in families. And it was my great pleasure to work with the folks at Disability Without Poverty to support them in writing poverty in Canada. The goal is for this to be an annual monitoring tool that will update annually. So I'm going to share some of the key highlights of what we found. And what we found, I probably don't need to tell this group here, but it was alarming what we found. So we looked at, first I'll just say we looked at overall poverty. We looked at poverty disaggregated by different demographic groups where we could break the data down. We looked at poverty for people with disabilities over time. And then we looked at some socio-demographic indicators. Who are people with disabilities in Canada? Unfortunately, that data is not cross-tabulated by poverty. And one of the things we saw is that there is a real lack of data on this issue. So what it's essentially doing is invisibilizing the experiences of people with disabilities who live in poverty, and this report card is trying to contribute to that, bringing light, bringing voice to these issues. And the report card, when you look at it, it's not all numbers. We've got a lot of first-person voice. We have first-person voice here today because it's so important to value the lived experiences and expertise in addition to what the numbers from StatCan tell us, because that's just only one particular way of looking at it. It's not the only way of looking at the issue. So what we found was people with disabilities in 2021, that's the latest data we had available for, are twice as likely as people without disabilities to live in poverty. So their poverty rate is 16%, more than 16.5%. That represents 1.5 million people with disabilities living in poverty in Canada who are 15 years and older. We actually don't have any data for children under 15 with a disability living in poverty. So that's just a huge lack of data that we have. So 16.5% of people with disabilities live in poverty. That's compared to 8.6% of people who identify as not having a disability. One of the other indicators we look at is how far away from that low income measure do people live? How far away are their incomes from the low-income measure that's called the depth of poverty, and in the report card you see it expressed as a percentage point. So on average, generally, people with disabilities who live in poverty are 30% away from the low-income measure. In dollar amounts, so this goes back to what Michelle was saying about, just making it to the poverty line is not lollipops and roses at all. The threshold for a single person with a disability, the poverty line is $27,352. So the gap, that poverty gap, is $7,549 below that amount. That's very significant. In fact, what we found was that a full quarter of people with disabilities have an after-tax income. So after-tax means after they've received any federal or provincial benefits or supplements. 25% of people with disabilities have an after-tax income between $10,000 and $19,000. I mean, in this day and age, with inflation, with rents, the cost of food, and all the other things, it's so little. Severity of disability and the type of severity is an indicator of poverty. So people who have severe or very severe disabilities were more likely to have incomes that fell below $20,000 in 2021. There's no provincial disability assistance program. So those, I'm from Ontario, the Ontario ODS, the Ontario Disability Program. There's programs across the country. There's none in any province that brings people with disabilities up to that low income measure. The only one that does is in the Northwest Territories. But generally, these programs range from $4,000 below the poverty line to $17,000 below the poverty line in New Brunswick. That's outrageous. Here in BC, the Disability Assistance Program is $9,500 below the poverty line. So it was no surprise that surveys done last year found that nearly half of the people surveyed were finding it difficult to meet their basic needs. Nearly half of the people surveyed by Angus Reid talked about the stress and the worry, that they're worried about money and not having enough to meet their needs. So we disaggregated data where we could. We found that 1 in 5 women with disabilities lived below the low-income measure, 17.6% of women. People with disabilities who lived alone were more likely than those who lived in families to live in poverty. So 37.6% of people with disabilities who lived alone compared to 10% of people who lived in families. A huge discrepancy. By age group, almost 1 million of those people who lived in poverty were working aged, and seniors made up the remainder of that almost 500,000 people, but that's still 1 in 5 seniors living in poverty. One of the things that we did see when we looked at the benefits of the poverty rates over time and the depth of poverty over time, we looked between 2013 to 2021. Disability poverty peaked in the year 2015. Almost 1 in 4 people with disabilities lived in poverty, but that slowly started to trend downwards until 2020. So what happened in 2020? We had a global pandemic, large swaths of the economy shut down, and the federal government stepped up in a way that they never have before. They created the Canadian Emergency Response Benefit. They topped up every major income benefit program they had, the Disability Tax Credit Program, the Canada Child Benefit, the GST rebate. All of that transferred to people in poverty, children in poverty, and people with disabilities living in poverty. We see that line graph in the report card, it just drops. We know that income transfers to individuals from the federal government make a difference. I do want to note that those programs are not perfect. The disability tax credit, the definition is too narrow, so it's really difficult to get eligibility for that program. The Canadian Emergency Response Benefit, if you didn't make $5,000, so those with the lowest incomes weren't eligible, it wasn't perfect, but it did still have an impact on poverty rates. So we echo Michelle's call and the call for people with for disability without poverty, for the federal government to step up, to act quickly on this day, which is the anniversary of the legislation that got introduced into the House of Commons. We need to pass this bill, and we need to address disability poverty right away. Thank you so much for your time, and I will give back to Amanda.
Woo!
Thank you, Leila. We now will invite Joanne to come and speak. Thank you for coming out today on this warm and beautiful day.
Hello, everybody. Hello. Wow. I am very pleased to be here to fight for our rights of property. There's so many people going through so much stress more and more because of it. Because they cannot live just a normal life. And they wait about, by the time they pay for the rent, their little bit bills, and hope they can budget enough money weekly to have enough money to end the month for a thing called food, which is getting so high. I'm not just speaking for disability. I know everybody is going through a hard time. But we need to keep up with the days. Because over the years, things are getting more and more expensive. And somehow the money is not keep up what we need. It seems like everything is going up, but not your money is as much as we should have. Yes, it's nice to go out once in a while, do a little bit, but it's getting to the point we can't do that. So we have to be careful with our money. And like I say, we need to go to our MAs, to your groups, to anybody that you know, and talk about it. Get them on board, and then talk about property. Because the more people who is involved, the more we can fight, and we need to keep on fighting. And I could go on about housing and how people off the street. You know why there's so many people homeless? Because there's no place for them to go. And we need to help on that. So I'm pleased to be here, and I'm going to keep on fighting. I'll be with BC People First for over 25 years, fighting of all different types of human rights, and I was the president 3 different times. So once again, thank you, and my message is never give up, and believe in yourself. So thank you, and have yourself a great day, and keep on going.
And I'm now going to invite Carrie to come. Oh, Carrie's looking nervous. You're going to deep right?
Yeah, I'm looking nervous, probably more hurt in my heart to hear about the struggles and to see how deep into poverty the disability community actually is. I was going to share my story, but before we start, I'd like to mention that also support other parents and families with children with disabilities. There was no numbers for families with children under 15 years of age, but I can attest that the majority, if not all, the clients that I support with children with disabilities are living well below the poverty line. Yeah, and it breaks my heart to see them struggle every day. These people, they do everything for their children. They eat peanut butter and jelly every day. That's their food. I also raised 3 children under the poverty line, and my oldest son has an intellectual and developmental disability. And I had this really strange idea in my head that once he was an adult, I would be able to go out and work 60 hours a week and earn all of this money and be able to support him, because I know the supports we have in place are not enough. That magically didn't happen because there's no supports to help look after him while I'm working these 60 hours a week to, you know, look after myself for the rest of my life and maybe 30 years after I pass on. My 2 other children, they came to me one day and they said, "Mom, are we gonna have to look after our brother when you're gone?" And my son, he is so lucky. He's got a family who loves and cares about him and do whatever they can to support him. And all I want for him is to not live in the street. I want him to have a warm, safe place to sleep at night. I want him to have healthy food. And I want him to be able to go out in the community, because that's what he loves. He loves working with people in the community, and go out in the community and contribute to society. And he can't do that if he's not fed and sheltered. I don't know what more to say. All I know is it was mentioned that people with disabilities have higher costs than those who don't. On my way here, I got a phone call from his doctor. He's actually in the hospital right now because he was failed by the system. And saying, well, the medication we want to use, it's $120 a month. It's not covered by pharmacare. So, yeah, after this, I'm going to go and look how that works into our budget. I thank you for putting on this event, and I think it is so important for the voices of people with disabilities and their families to be heard. Thank you.
Thank you. So these are just a few of the postcards that we have signed locally. We know that, for example, Community Food Centres Canada had 40,000 postcards across the country. Disability Without Poverty has a number of thousands of postcards across the country. These are all of our signed postcards, like I said, local, some just from today. This box, is also full of postcards. All of these are going to Minister Freeland. They are postage paid. If you are watching this on Facebook Live right now and would like some postcards, leave a note. There is of course, we'll get you one. Yep. And you can have this delightful pen as well. There you are. There is a digital campaign running as well. If you are unable to get some physical postcards, you can go to disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca to find our digital toolkit to get those postcards sent off to Prime Minister Trudeau, Minister Qualtrough, and Minister Freeland. I'm going to make sure MP Singh gets these ones and takes them to Ottawa with him. And speaking of MP Singh, he was unable to attend today because he's in Ottawa and flying back from Ottawa, but he did write a statement for us that DWP Chair Michelle Hewitt will read now.
Woohoo! Thank you, everyone. Leo would really like to say hi to that dog over there, so we're all... Okay. No, it's fine. Well, Leo can sit and wait. So I just want to say that I'm grateful to MP Singh, to Jagmeet Singh for having us here today, and for the NDP. Benita Zarrillo has been a great friend to us, as has Minister Carla Qualtrough, and I know MP Tracy Great is the other disability critic is in my riding of Kelowna, and Louise Chabot from the Bloc. This is a bipartisan, cross-party issue. And, I know all of us here from different organisations, and particularly us at Disability Without Poverty, we will talk to anybody that will work with us to make a difference. We're not here supporting one party or another. We just want to make the difference happen. And so any politicians out there, Facebook Live, municipal, provincial, federal, you want to make a difference, the people who are here today are ready to work with you to make that happen. So, as part of making that difference happen, so much thanks to MP Singh, who says, "Dear friends and activists, I want to thank you all for the work you are doing today across the country on behalf of Canadians living with disabilities. I'm sorry that neither myself nor our NDP critic for disability inclusion, Benita Zarrillo, Port Moody Coquitlam, can join you in person. However, please know you have our utmost support in your urgency to pass Bill C-22. As you know, earlier this year, NDP MP Zarrillo forced a vote in the House of Commons on the Canada Disability Benefit Act to urgently deliver help to Canadians with a disability. In committee, NDP MP Zarrillo also ensured the bill includes a clause that forces the government to consider the official poverty line when determining the amount of money that would go to people living with a disability who need it. Since then, the bill is ready to return from the Senate to pass third reading and become law. As groups like the Burnaby Association for Community Inclusion, BACCI, represented here by Heather, over there waving to us, have conveyed to me directly, this cannot happen soon enough. There are lives at stake. As such, know that MP Zarrillo is working on this constantly, and I have instructed my House team to work on making sure this comes back to the House before the summer recess. Thank you for taking the time today to bring further attention to this issue. Please continue to keep up the pressure on parliamentarians via phone calls, emails and social media posts. Warm regards, Jagmeet Singh, MP, Burnaby South, Leader, New Democratic Party of Canada. So thank you very much, MP Singh, and thank you to every politician across this country of every stripe who is working with us to end disability poverty. And yes, if you're a part of an organisation, if you have a knitting circle, a book club, a gardening club, whatever, that you could take a group of postcards to, sign them, put them in the mail. Until this bill is budgeted, we will not give up. And Leo has had enough of this heat. So now I'm moving out of the heat again, because it doesn't do well for me either.
So we have a few moments left if anybody else would like to come and speak. I'm going to turn the mic over. You'd like to say something? We'd love to hear you speak. And then once everyone who has wanted an opportunity has had an opportunity to speak, we're going to take some photos, hopefully of the people that have gathered with our big beautiful box, and made by Gordon Neighborhood House, and then we'll thank you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Reason why I was late, because I didn't know where you guys were at. Anyway, I'm Sylvia, and the ministry paid for this awesome scooter. 5 or 7 years, I fought with them to get a scooter. They kept on giving me a walker. I had 3 walkers. Both of them broke because of my neglect. And this one is like, it's cracked, but it's cracked here, cracked in the back, because I was so destructive when I first got it. But now I am okay. I almost tripped over the over the curve before I got here, but anyhow, the reason why I'm saying we need to raise the rates. If there's any possibility of $2,000, we can raise the rates, because right now I am suffering. I have really bad health issues, and it's very private, and I am suffering, and we need to raise the rates. $2,000. The damn bloody government can afford $2,000. It's shame on them for not giving us $2,000. I'm on a disability, and you know, my two people, I hate it. I hate it. I have money, I pay my bills, I do what I need to do. 2 days later, I'm broke. I mean, how can you live like that? You can't. You can't. It's hard. So I'm telling the MPs, everybody out there, you guys gotta raise the bloody rates, because I am suffering. I live in a supportive housing, Maggie's place. If I don't do Maggie's place, I would run on the street. Well, I was homeless 2 years ago. I was living in a shelter, but still. If it wasn't for Maggie's place, I wouldn't be here, you know. They have food. They have clean stuff. I mean, like, my home care is a employer from Maggie's place. I mean, like, but still, it's a good place to have. It's a good place to be, but still, it's just a constant gnawing. I'm waiting for money to come in, and $900 is not enough. We need to get $2,000, please, as fast as you can. Pass this bloody bill. Give us $2,000 now. Woo!
Thank you for doing the action and not actually dropping the rented microphone. But I saw that mic drop. That was beautiful.
I'm just pissed.
A lot of people are very angry and in need. We have time for one more person to speak if anybody else would like to. No? Great. So I would like to thank you all for coming. We do have copies of Jagmeet's letter, if anybody would like to take one home with them, and also have information. Jalen will be handing those out. And look us up at disabilitywithoutpoverty.ca. Thank you for coming out. We really appreciate it. We are going to fast track this benefit. We are going to get the benefit adequately budgeted to raise people in disability poverty at least to the poverty line. Hopefully higher than that. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Jalen. Thank you to MP Singh's office for being so open and gracious and welcoming us here. And really thank you to MP Singh. And thank you for making the Bill C-22 a priority of your party. Thank you.